Hi everyone, welcome to today's SilverlightShow webinar. My name is Svetla and I'm pleased to introduce you today to our webinar presenter Michael Crump. The topic of today's webinar is 10 things a Silverlight developer should know when building a Metro application. The session will continue for about 60 minutes and we'll have the usual short 10 minutes Q&A session at the end. If you have any questions during this presentation, please feel free to send them over using the chat option in your webinar panel. Michael will try to address as many questions as possible during the Q&A session. If we have unreplied questions, we'll of course address them after the webinar. I would like to invite you to tweet this webinar as well as fill out our post-webinar survey and have the chance to win some free ebooks from SilverlightShow ebook shelf and from Pact Publishing. Okay, that was it from me today. Michael?
So thank you very much for that introduction. Again, the title for the webinar today is 10 Things a Silverlight Developer Should Know When Building a Metro Application. Let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, I want to mention that you can win a free ebook of your choice from the SilverlightShow ebook shelf. So please tweet this webinar using #webinar SilverlightShow. So 2 of you will get an ebook from Pact Publishing, and you can actually choose between Microsoft Silverlight 5 Data and Services Cookbook or MVVM Survival Guide for Enterprise Architecture in Silverlight and WPF. I have actually read the Microsoft Silverlight 5 Data and Services Cookbook. It is excellent. I have not read the other one, but I am sure it is a great book as well. So, as an introduction, my name is Michael Crump. I am a Microsoft MVP. I'm also an MCPD, and that basically stands for Microsoft Certified Professional Developer. I work at a company called Telerik. You can visit them if you would like at www.telerik.com. I also have a personal website that you can visit, and you can find that as simply going to michaelcrump.net. I'm also on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at mbcrump. I try not to tweet things that describe my lunch. I try to keep it very technical. So please check that out and feel free to follow me. I would love to have you in my Twitter stream. So before we get started today, I have to show some sort of Star Wars reference, and I decided that I would show it at the very beginning. And this is just simply a reminder that the Windows 8 that we're currently talking about is in the release preview state. So it would be wise to install this inside of a virtual machine instead of putting it on actual hardware, unless you have actual hardware to spare. So a very quick overview of what we're going to do today is we're going to go through just a very quick intro, and then the 10 things that I have found personally while working and moving from Silverlight applications to Metro that I'm going to share with you, and then we're going to follow up with the Q&A. So we have about 60 minutes of the webinar and then about 15 minutes worth of live Q&A. So the question that I get asked at all of the developer conferences that I go to is, hey, I'm a Silverlight developer. Now what? Now I have this new thing called Windows 8 and WinRT for Windows Runtime. What do I do now? And my answer is pretty much always the same. If you're a Silverlight developer, you are still going to be able to build Silverlight applications and deploy them on a Windows 8 box. And this goes into the whole thing about we have the desktop mode versus the Metro mode. And of course, in the desktop mode, you can run all of your old applications, your old even VB applications, they're going to work there. Your Silverlight applications, Any version is going to work there, but then you get to the Metro mode. Now, inside of the Metro mode, of course, you're not going to be able to run a Silverlight application, but your XAML skills that you've learned from Silverlight, you're going to be able to port those over to WinRT. And that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So the main thing I want you to get out of this slide and out of this question is that you're still going to be able to develop applications in Metro with the same skill set that you already have. There are a couple of differences and we'll describe those, but just keep that in mind. You're not left completely out in the cold here. So let's begin by starting with the absolute fundamentals. What do we know about Silverlight? And I know this looks like kind of just the wall of text, but I think it's kind of necessary to see the complete picture here. So with Silverlight, we know, okay, it was hosted in a web browser via plugins. Silverlight applications, they can run in this Windows 8 desktop mode only that I was just talking about. Looking over on the Metro side, for our Metro applications, they're actually going to be running on top of WinRT inside of Windows 8. And then, of course, Metro applications can only run in Windows 8. So as far as development skills go, you can use C#, VB, and XAML to develop applications in Silverlight. Whereas in Metro, you can use your C#, VB, C++, XAML, or basically HTML, JavaScript, and CSS to develop those same applications. As far as XNA goes, it's really partial. It's available in Silverlight 5. You don't get access to absolutely everything that's in XNA, the full XNA framework. In Metro mode, XNA is not available at all, but you do have the ability that you can use DirectX. Going into the .NET frameworks, you can use .NET frameworks in Silverlight 2.0 basically through 4.5 if you install the latest Visual Studio 2012 release candidate. For Metro applications, this is using exclusively the .NET Framework 4.5. So you can develop Silverlight applications using pretty much any version of Visual Studio. I know I've used from 08 to 2010 to 2012 and even the VS11 betas. So with Metro, you can develop using Visual Studio 11. That has actually been moved now to Visual Studio 2012 release candidate, but you can use VS11 if you still have it, and you can only deploy that on a Windows 8 box. So as far as Silverlight goes, it was really built primarily for a mouse and a keyboard input. So we're thinking here of Chrome. Your typical Silverlight application, it had Chrome around it. It had a browser. It was living, of course, inside of the browser, so you had your normal scroll wheels, scroll buttons. With Metro, it's really built with touch in mind. So no Chrome, and this kind of goes into the message that Microsoft keeps preaching, content over Chrome. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that things that in the past were always visible, maybe like the menu bar or settings or application bars and things like that. Now in Metro applications, you have to do some sort of swipe gesture or right mouse click to see those out bars. So there's several little things that you have to keep in mind when you're starting to just transition from Silverlight over to Metro. So my next topic that I want to talk about is actually the application lifecycle. I think it's very important that you get a clear understanding of the application lifecycle between Silverlight and Metro applications. So with Silverlight, a user requests a web page. An HTML page object tag loads the plugin. So the plugin downloads the zap file and it reads the manifest. Then we get creating the instance of the application class. Then we fire our application startup event, and then we have a completed page rendering. That is pretty much the complete application lifecycle. From there, the application is running, and it stays running until the user hits the close button on the browser. If the user doesn't close the browser, then of course the Silverlight application will continue running. So with Metro, things are just a little bit different. Basically, a user launches an application and you see a splash screen. Next, you have a running application. So at this point, you'll see an orange on your screen here. Code gets to run. So code is running at this point. So the application gets 5 seconds to handle suspend. So we're suspending. We can suspend an app at this point. So apps, when they're in the suspended state, no code is actually being run. Apps are notified though when they have been resumed, and then you go back to a running application. So the next step is when an application or when your PC begins to hit low memory, then the application is not notified before termination. So when the operating system detects its low memory, then it automatically terminates the application itself. So this is completely not driven by the user at all. Now, there are ways, of course, that a user can terminate an application if they would like to do so. They can drag from the top of the screen or swipe from the top down to close it. They can even use things such as Alt F4 that we're used to in Windows to close an application. But by default, Windows 8 is handling your state of your application at all times. So the next thing that I think that every Silverlight developer needs to understand is the XML namespaces. So you only declare the namespace, never the assembly, and you should be using the word using instead of CLR namespace. And we'll actually take a look at this in just a little while. But just keep that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the next slide where you can kind of see an example of this. So in this example, this is where I took Scott Guthrie's Silverlight 2 application and actually converted it to Metro. So as you see up at the very top, we have our user control X class, dig sample.page, and you don't have to worry too much about the .page because in Silverlight 2 they actually named it page instead of main page, which happened a little bit later on. Then you have two very common XML namespaces, and you'll notice here that they are absolutely identical. So you have an XML namespace and then XML namespace with X, is the name, and then you have one called XML namespace with the name of dig, and you'll see that it's actually called by CLR-namespace :dig sample. So in Metro, this same identical application would actually be called using with our using statement. So if you look down at the very bottom here, you'll see the XML namespace dig equals quote using :dig sample. So that's one thing to keep in mind regarding the XML namespaces. Also, here is another example that I decided to add, and in this one, this is for Microsoft's Add SDK. So in Silverlight, you have, of course, your XML namespace add, and then you have CLR namespace Microsoft.advertising.mobile.ui, and then you have the assembly equals Microsoft.advertising.mobile.ui. In Metro, this is a lot easier to define. As you see here, the only thing that we've added here is XML namespace add equals using and then our Microsoft.advertising.winrt.ui. That was all that's required to declare the add in XML. The next thing to note here is actually code namespaces. So the majority of the changes that I have found are in the UI related classes. So the best thing that I tell everybody that's trying to get a grasp on this is that when you're thinking of system.windows, now begin to think of windows.ui.xaml. So if we go ahead and we switch over to the next slide here, then we'll kind of start seeing a difference. So code namespaces continued for Silverlight. We have our using system.windows, system.windows.controls, system.windows.data, and so forth. Now you look at these same exact things in Metro, and you will notice that it just starts with a windows.ui.xaml or windows.ui.xaml.controls, data, documents, input, media. So when I'm actually converting an application from Silverlight to Metro, I've found that I can pretty much do a find and replace on system.windows and replace it with windows.ui.xaml, and it cleans up a whole lot of my using statements. So that is one thing to keep in mind there. There's also a Silverlight 5 versus WinRT comparison by namespace. I've added a bit.ly link here, and don't worry about writing this down if you're watching this webinar live or if you're watching it through pre-recorded. The slides are all available at SilverlightShow. So you'll be able to find those by simply going to SilverlightShow and looking through the webinars. So here is a comparison screenshot that I grabbed. So this was for Silverlight 5 versus WinRT comparison by namespaces. So the things that you'll see if you go to this web page is you'll see the namespace, you'll see the types, you'll see the members, and then you'll see the differences. So of course you're going to see a lot of the differences back in what we were just talking about in that system. So if we look at system on this screen here, it's about halfway through the page, you'll see that we have about 923 differences there. There are other differences as well, and I would encourage you to check that out. Here is actually an example of drilling in to system.windows. So this is the type of information that you'll get if you go to the site. And under system.windows, you'll see for Silverlight 5, we had things such as a public Silverlight host, and then we had a public boolean is running out of browser. So you'll notice that in Windows RT, well, of course, it's not a Silverlight application, so those items have been removed. You no longer can call a host or a is running out of browser because it absolutely doesn't make sense in WinRT. But if you are converting that Silverlight 5 project over to WinRT and you want to know the differences, then this is a great place that I would definitely encourage you to start. So we're already on number 4, which is making WebRequest. So when I first started doing a conversion from a Silverlight 2 application to WinRT, I hit this instantly. So hopefully I can save you some of the pain points that I experienced. The first one is that web client has been removed from WinRT. Instead, now you use HTTP client. So keep HTTP client in mind here. And also, WebRequest, they make use of async, await, and task of T. Now, we'll go into what exactly async, await, and task of T is in just a second. One other gotcha that I found in just one of my applications was that callbacks such as async result need to be rewritten. So if you're using that already in your Silverlight application, async result, then you're going to need to be rewriting that. So let's talk briefly about asynchronous programming. So one of the things is that I've read through all of the articles on MSDN, and I've looked at a lot of different samples on the web about asynchronous program, and I decided that actually I would just kind of give it in my simple terms of what these three things mean. So what is async? So async is basically just going to avoid the bottleneck of your application being executed line by line. So your program can now continue to execute. We all remember those applications that we started and that would get caught up, it would get hung up. Our user may be waiting for a combo box to fill with data. Async helps you avoid that. So the async keyword also enables the await keyword in that same method. So basically these two are going to always be seen together inside of a method. So the await operator, it's applied to a task to suspend execution of the method until the task is actually complete. And really all task T is doing is representing an asynchronous operation that's going to return some sort of value. Here is a very quick sample of a Silverlight application, and inside of this Silverlight application we see we are using web client actually to initiate the async network call to dig. Then we have our download string completed, and then after that we have our void dig service download stories completed with an e.error equals to null. We can call another method or whatnot. So let's go ahead now and take a look at Metro. So with Metro, the main thing you're going to see up at the top is a public async void and then a search button click event. And we look here underneath var client, we see equals new HTTP client, and then a var response equals new HTTP response message. So we're getting the response from a response equals await. Here is where our async and await matches together with the client.get async, and we're passing in the new URI, which is dig URL. We take that task of the string, our response string, that equals response.content.read_as_string async. So it has the full string in at this point. So now we can add string result equals await response string, and then our display stories, which we're going to see in just a second, we can pass it the result. So I know you're tired at this point of seeing slides. I just wanted to go over a few of those things first before we dived into the demos. So let's just go ahead and we'll briefly look at this web client and HTTP client inside of Visual Studio 2012. So I'm going to minimize this window here. So here we are, we're inside of a Silverlight 5 project, and this is the dig sample that I actually converted. So we can go right click and we can go properties, and we can see that this is actually the Silverlight 5 project. And we have our dig story, which was basically copy and pasted from Scott Guthrie's Silverlight 2 dig example. And then inside of our page.xaml, we will begin seeing that we have a dig search. You can enter a keyword. I've just hard-coded Microsoft here. And of course you can hit the search button. The stories detail view, if we click on that, that will basically just give you a little bit more information about that story. But what we're really interested in here is the actual call. So if we scroll down just a tad, and I'm going to go ahead and expand that window where you can see things a little bit more clearly. So we are constructing our dig rest URL. So services.dig search, and then our query. And this query, of course, is just going to be coming from topic, which is our text search topic.text. And then we're initiating our async network call to dig. So our web client, like we've always known and loved, and then our download string complete and download string async. So after that is in place, down here at the bottom you'll see a display stories that passes in the XML content. So we're using a little bit of link here, and we are able to actually extract out the information that we want. And of course we have a selection change. So I'm going to run this application, and if I run this application, actually I need to move it over to this monitor here. This is an out of browser application, and that is because Dig changed their client policy, so I had to make this out of browser. So inside of Dig search, if we type in the word Microsoft and we hit search, we will now see our search results being displayed using Web Client. I can click on an item, and of course as I click on an item it tells me who submitted it, how many digs, and then if I decided to click on the link, then an Internet Explorer reference will open. And in this case, since that link apparently is very old, we just simply get a 404 page not found, but it actually is going to that link. So I can go ahead and close out of that. I'm going to close out of my out of browser application. So we've just seen Web Client in action, and let's go ahead now and we'll close that solution. So now we'll just navigate over to our Metro sample. So I'm going to go File, Open, Project. I'm going to go to Dig Sample, and now the Metro version of this application has now been loaded. So you can see I have the same sort of things here. I have the dig story, simply copy and pasted that. I have the main page.xaml. This is exactly what we just saw just a second ago. The only difference, of course, is here inside of our XML namespaces that we talked about earlier. And then we have our stories detail view, which is actually just that user control. Again, copy and pasted from Scott Guthrie's example. But then if we switch to the actual C# code in our main page.xaml.cs, this is where we notice a little bit of a difference here. So I went over it a little bit earlier, but I'll go over it again very quickly. So we have our topic that comes from text, search topic.text, and then we have constructing our dig REST URL, and then of course we're initiating our async network call to dig. So var client equals new HTTP client, and then our response, which is HTTP response message. We get a response. Our response is await. So you see here we have async and await. There again, they're paired together. Client.getAsync new URI with our dig URL. And here's where we're using task. And of course, if we hover over task, it says, hey, this represents an asynchronous operation that returns a value. And what is it going to return? It's actually going to return our content. So our response.content.read a string async. So we have now a response string. We can put that string inside of a result, and then we can call display stories, which uses that same link that we were using just a little bit earlier with, of course, X document. I've had to add just a few namespaces here, and the rest of the code is pretty much copy and paste. So you'll notice the only differences here is that we have had to add in system our windows.ui.xaml and windows.ui.xaml.controls and windows.ui.xaml.navigation. For link, it has still contained in the system.link. And there's a couple of duplicates there, and I'm not sure if that's a bug in my code or if it was a bug in the template that I had used. So let's go ahead now. We're going to actually deploy this to the local machine. So I'm just going to select local machine here. So it takes it just a second. So we're now running in Metro mode. So we have dig search, which was hard-coded, and I'm just going to type in the word Microsoft. Again, of course, we can tell this is a Metro application. We get our little X button here to clear, and then you can't see it, but this button actually says submit. So we're going to click on submit, and it should take it just a second, and we get the same exact thing that we saw just a second ago. We, of course, the scroll wheel. This is because Windows 8 is designed for tablets. We can select one of them, just like we did before, and we have our user control listed here. Again, it has the submitted information, how many digs, and then the title. Now we can click on this, and if we click on this, this will actually launch the Metro browser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on this, And I've actually changed my default Metro browser to Chrome instead of using IE. I have instructions on my website if you want to do that. And of course you'll notice that the little minimize, maximize, and close buttons have been removed from the Metro version of this. So I'm just going to go ahead now and I'm going to close out of that screen and we'll go back to our application that we were at. And actually we can close this one out as well and get back into Visual Studio. And the only thing to really pay attention to here is that if you want to call a web browser, one of the things that I had to learn was that you actually have to use this windows.system.launcher.launch URI async equals new URI. Of course, we're just in this example, we're given a tag toString, and then I'm just setting it to relative or absolute. The source code for both of these samples, for the Silverlight 5 and for the Metro application, is also going to be included on SilverlightShow, so you can check those out as well. So let's go ahead now. I'm just going to go and close this project, and we're going to jump back into the slides because I know you love slides. So we're about 30 minutes in, which means we're making pretty good time, and we are on number 5 now, which is storage. So this is files in isolated storage. So again, I kind of followed the same format that I did with the very first slide, which was just general info. So for file I/O, so Silverlight in isolated storage, you can do anything. In Metro, it's pretty much the same way. In isolated storage, you are able to read, write, delete, and update. Now, things get a little bit different when we start talking about files. So in Silverlight, you could read and write a file to the Documents folder via these open and save dialogues, or by using Elevated Trust in Silverlight 4. In a Metro application, you can read and write a file to the same Documents folder via file pickers, only if set in the application manifest. So before you're able to write a file to that Documents folder, you have to set it inside of the application manifest, which we'll see in just a second here. Also, in Silverlight, if you decided that you want to read and write a file to the temp directory, it was possible via file pickers, or if you used full trust, which was in Silverlight 5. So in Silverlight 5, using full trust, it did not require any sort of user intervention. In Metro, with writing or reading a file from the temp directory, it's only possible via file pickers only. So one thing that maybe I didn't clarify here is that reading and writing a file to the document folders, you can do that without user intervention, but as far as reading and writing a file to, say, maybe the temp directory, that would only be possible via file pickers only. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at that right now with a demo. So we're going to look again at some code here. So I'm just going to minimize out of that, and I'm going to jump back into Visual Studio, and I'm going to go File, Open, Project, and we're going to go to 5 files, and we're just going to begin with this file sample that is created. So again, this is a Silverlight 5 project, and I'm just going to switch over here to the main page. And again, without any sort of user interaction, because we've specified it back here, if we go into properties, we have required elevated trust when running in browser. Even though I've made this an out of browser, you see that we require elevated trust when running outside of the browser. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click OK here, and I'm going to go ahead and run this application just as is. So we run our application. Actually, I'm sorry, this was in browser. So I'm just going to type in a name here called Silverlight Show is awesome, and I'm going to write the file. And now that I did that, if I scroll over my window here, you'll see we have a new text file that was just created, and it says Silverlight Show is awesome. I can of course read from that file if I wish by clicking on Read File. So Read File, we're showing Silverlight Show is awesome. So I'm just going to close out of the browser here, and this was always, fairly typical stuff. So for writing a file, we were checking string path, path.combine, get folder path, which was our special folder, my documents, and we just named it new text file. There's a couple of error checking here, but what we'll see is that inside we have our stream writer with the file.create text, giving it the path, and then we're writing whatever is inside of the text box. And in our read file, we're basically doing the same thing. We're getting the path. If the path exists, we're using stream reader, and then we're putting a file.open text, giving it the path, getting the file content where we're just reading to the end, and then displaying that txt read file.txt with whatever was in the file content, and then of course closing out of our stream reader. And that was pretty much all that we were doing here in a Silverlight application. So of course this is working with local files. So let's go ahead now and let's open up our Metro application. So writing a file in Metro. I think the first thing that would be beneficial would be actually showing this application running live. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on local machine and run it first. So we see here, hey, Silverlight Show. So we're going to display some results here. So this is a demo that I wrote for DevPro Connections, which is a magazine that I do some work for, and I wanted to show you guys the same thing. I've added file pickers to this demo, so if we hit the button called Create, the first thing that we're going to see is the file devproconnections.txt was created. If I scroll over to my other monitor and move this in, we'll see we have our new file just called devproconnections that was just created. I'm going to go ahead and move this over and switch back to where we were at. So that was creating a file. So now writing information to it, we can click this write button. So we basically put DevPro Connections, the great magazine, was written to this same file. So again, switching back over to our file and double clicking, we have DevPro Connections is a great magazine. So let's switch over again, and we can read the file. So we see the following text was read from DevPro Connections. Hey, it's a great magazine. We could make a copy of the file. So basically we just copied DevPro Connections new.txt is copied from DevPro Connections.txt. And again, if we look over here inside of our documents folder, that is there for us. Again, switching back over, we can delete. So now devproconnections.txt has been deleted. Again, we can look and we can see that that original file has been deleted. And then the last thing just to show you is the example of a file picker. So created just a couple of screenshots with my camera before I started this webinar. So hopefully these shots won't scare you too bad. So this is an example of selecting a file from a file picker. So I'm selecting a file and I'm hitting open, and here I'm actually just displaying this inside of an image. So let's go ahead now and let's look at the code for this. And again, the code for all of this is contained at Silverlight Show. So I'm going to close out of this and I'm going to switch back over to our Visual Studio 2012 release candidate. So the first thing that I want to mention is that inside of the package.appx manifest, we have capabilities. So as you see, we've added this capabilities to the documents library access. So this says enables adding, changing, or deleting files in the documents library. This has to occur, or you're going to get an exception if you try to access those resources. The next thing that you're going to need to add is file type associations. So I've selected, there's available declarations, and there's a bunch of them that's available here. I've selected file type associations, and the bare minimum that you need to add here is just the name, and this is text, and then the supported file type, and the file type is just simply going to be .txt. And Visual Studio is great about when you're hovering over some of these things and you're not exactly sure, what to type in. Visual Studio helps you with this. So like for this one, specifies the MIME content type. So image, JPEG, and then from here the file type you could just put .jpg. So where it gets a little interesting is inside of the code, and I've kept this code very simple. So the thing that you're going to need to really get used to here is storage folders. So we have storage folders, known folders .documents library. Again, we're back to this async and await, and you're going to see this all throughout your Metro applications. So you can see we create file async, we gave it the name, and then of course I'm just displaying the results in this text block. Writing a file, it's just almost as easy. We're giving it, of course, the storage folder. In this sample, it's going to be our documents library. We're getting the file async named devproconnections.txt. Then we're using iRandomAccessStream. Again, we're awaiting. So we're awaiting sample file.openAsync, and then we're just getting read-write access on this file. So we use an an iOutput stream, which is a sequential stream of bytes to be written. And then we use our data writer, and this writes data to an output stream. Again, you may not be used to this. I certainly wasn't and had to look it up. So we're going to write this string, which is Dev Pro Connections is a great magazine, and then we're using await again, data writer.storeAsync, and then we flush the sync like we're used to closing out a stream reader or stream writer, and again we're displaying the results. I do have a little bit of try-catch file exception here, but you would probably want to do this a little bit better. For reading the file, very, very, very similar. Instead of up here at the top, we were doing an output stream. Here we're using input stream. So we have, of course, our storage file, storage folder.get file async, iRandomAccessStream equals await sample file.open async, and this time we're just going to have a file mode, access mode of read. And then our input stream is equal to read stream dot in get input stream at, and I'm just starting at the 0 byte, and then we're using our data reader, and then our number of bytes loaded await data reader dot load async, and then our read stream dot size. So this will output absolutely everything that's in that data reader. So again, we have a little bit of exception error handling. So copying the file is very simple. We're getting our storage file, which is our storage folder.get file async, and then our storage file copy file, which is sample file.copy async storage folder, and then we're giving it the new name. And then of course there's a couple of options that we can do here for a name collision option. So in this, it's just generate unique name, several other options, and then we're just outputting text results. Deleting it is very simple. We get the file, and then we use our await on sample file.delete async, and then I'm updating the results. So for the file pickers, just a little bit different here. We're using var picker equals new file open picker, and then picker suggested start location equals our picture library. and our view mode is set to thumbnail. Now of course you can change this, and I'm just filtering by JPEGs because I knew that by default if I took a webcam picture it would be a JPEG. So after we do that, var file equals await picker.pick single file async, and here is where we're using a stream that says await file.open async with the read mode, and then a bitmap image equals new bitmap image.set source to our stream, and then the UI image, which is what we placed on our main page, is just our source is just going to be set to the image. Again, the source code for all of this is available on SilverlightShow if you want to look at this a little bit more in detail. So let's switch back over to the slides here. And the next thing I want to mention is navigation. So rethink URI. So in a typical Silverlight application, when we were navigating from one page to the next, this is pretty much the standard. We had navigation, we had frame, x.name content frame, maybe gave it a style, but then we used navigation frame.URI mapper. So URI mapper equals URI, and in this case we're going to map that to a views home.xaml. And then of course if we had another one, we could map that to maybe a page named of mapped URI equals views.pagename.xaml. And then of course we're just closing out of a couple of other tags. We also could navigate to another page simply by using something like this.navigationservice.navigate equals new URI page1.xaml, and then give it a relative URI kind. In a Metro application, it's a little bit different. So in a Metro application, you're going to be using a lot of a this.frame.navigate. So in this header click event, we're determining what group the button instance represents. So a var group, sender as framework element.data context, and now we're just going to navigate to the appropriate destination page. So we have this.frame.navigate type of group detail page, and this is of course a XAML page, and then of course we're passing in the group, and the group of course is defined right here. There's also this on navigated to that you're going to find in every single new page that you create in a Metro application, and this is really designed of course for MVVM in mind here. So we have our var group equals maybe a sample data group, and I took this out of actually just one of the templates. E.parameter, this.default group, this.default view model group equals group, and this.default view model item equals group.items. So now you can take this information and you can start manipulating it and doing things with it in your Metro application. So the next thing to mention is controls. So some controls are here and some controls are actually missing from Metro. So for Silverlight controls, there's quite a few that's actually missing in action. And this is where, hopefully Telerik, whom I work for, will be able to start filling in the gaps for some of these controls. So we have a calendar that's missing, child window, data grid, data pager, date picker, description viewer, and several other things such as the open file dialog. Now you have file pickers, they're just named a little differently. Tab control, tab item, tree views, and a few more. And the web browser has actually been changed to be called web view. So let's look at the wall of controls in Metro. So you probably have seen this slide before. It's been used a couple of times, and the reason that I'm showing it is because I think it's a great representation of what exactly Metro controls have to offer. So we see up at the top we have our typical OK buttons, we have our checkbox buttons, we have our radio buttons, then we have a combo box. Now the combo box is a tiny bit different here, as when you click on this it kind of splits out. If there's multiple items, it starts you in the middle where of course touch is listed first. We have a context menu, we have a web view, and we're going to talk about these in just a moment, from flip view to grid view to list view. Some of the things that you may not be used to is inside of the text box. We now have built-in spell checking and of course a clear button. There's a new progress ring here. And inside of the password now there is a reveal button, and this reveal button is basically looks just like a little bitty key. There's toggle switches here where you can toggle from on or off. And then of course we have our scroll bar and the slider. As you're sliding through the items, it will give you a numerical representation of where you're actually at. So as far as the brand new XAML controls in Metro, list view is going to be displaying a collection as a stack of items. So for this, really think of a snapped application. If you're not familiar with snapped applications, there's a lot of resources on MSDN about that. Grid view, think grid-based layouts and grouping of items. Semantic zoom, it was named the jump viewer. This allows you to zoom in or out of a collection. And then we have flip view. This is an item control. It displays one item at a time. You see this more commonly in news applications like USA Today uses this. The media player now has built-in playback buttons. Everybody that was using Silverlight may be used to the media element, where you would drag a media element onto your screen, but you would have to actually add in play, pause, stop buttons and things like that. Now you don't have to worry about that. And then we have the progress ring, which is a simple progress indicator that has a circular motion. And then there's a few others that you may or may not be aware of. The application bar, there's a carousel panel, there's a rich text block, and there's also a wrap grid. So I have a demo for controls, but we're running a little short on time, so that will be included in the code download. So the next thing I want to talk about is animations. So animations, they are a key component of Metro style personality, but they're not actually new to Silverlight. So in Silverlight, Silverlight has always had animation easings, and they basically allowed you to apply built-in animation functions for your Silverlight controls. So the result is a variety of animation effects that make your controls move in a more realistic way. I used several of these when I was first building my applications in Silverlight. Of course, a lot of third-party vendors started making different types of animations that would help you out, and then there was a slew of these things that appeared in Blend. Well, Microsoft on the flip side helps you out a lot more with animations in Metro because they want it to be fast and fluid, and they want you to get the same look and feel that you have in your Windows 8 operating system. So think of an independent animation. So this is an animation that runs independently from the thread, running the core UI logic. Then you have dependent animations. These run on the UI thread, but you have to turn the allow dependent animation to true. But the main thing to hit on here is the animation library. This is the one that it's built in, ready to go. There's a bit.ly link here that I would encourage you to check out. These things are like theme transitions, so these can animate loading, unloading, or changing locations on the screen. And then theme animations, so these are built to run on user interactions and you must trigger them. Now if you don't like any of these animations, then of course you can always create custom ones as well. So I wanted to actually take a look at a demo, and this demo was not created by me. It was actually created by a fellow named Colin. But what I did was I updated it to Visual Studio 2012 release candidate, where you would be able to see it. I think this is one of the best demos of the animations that are built in by Microsoft, so I wanted to show it. I've included the code project link where I found it at, and also the updated source is available. So let's take a look at that really quickly. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to Visual Studio 2012 12, and we're going to go back to our 10 things, and we're going to go straight to animations, and I'm going to go to animations example, and from here I'm just going to run the application. And this is what we see. So when you add items to the UI, they basically appear at the location determined by the layout process. So we're just adding a couple in here, and of course in this sample they just keep drilling down to the bottom. But if you use this entrance theme transition, they slide into place gracefully. I find this very, very handy. So let's just go to the next one here. So if you add multiple elements, at the entrance theme transitions will fire at the same time. So here we're adding 2 at a time. So as you notice, we're using the entrance theme transitions, they're firing at the same time. So you can move the transitions to the parent panel by setting child transitions. So when the elements are added, the transitions are fired in sequence. So you can see the sequence here. So the order in which the transitions fire is the order of the elements in the panel.children collection. So I'm adding a whole pile of rectangles. We just saw that happen, but what we see here is that this is not necessarily the order they occupy on the screen. And hopefully with the GoToWebinar you're able to see that. So a reposition theme transition will animate any change in the element position. So let's move the rectangle. So hopefully these animations are coming through over GoToWebinar. If not, check out the video. And then this animation, if the element is moved directly or a result of the movements due to the layout changes. So we're going to add a couple of rectangles. So now we're going to remove it. So watch this green one as we remove it. So all of the other ones are going back into position. So the last set of demos here is the add delete theme transition. This is panel specific transition. It fades new items into view and provides a coordinated reposition of elements on delete. So I'm adding a rectangle. As you see, they're being added here. And now we can actually remove them. So as you see, we're starting to remove them. We're down to 2. So in these examples, you can basically understand how exactly Microsoft has added in the animations for you. And if we go back over to our project here, and I'm just going to stop this project, you'll see inside of all of these pages, and I can just go into one of the pages, that the source code for all of this is provided here, and I would definitely encourage you to check this out and learn a little bit more about the animations that's provided out of the box by Microsoft. So we are approaching the end. We're on number 9 now, which is freebies. So this is what I call searching and sharing. So in a Silverlight application, you really didn't have the ability to search and share with other applications. You had to put all of this functionality and you had to build it in. Well, with Windows 8, it introduces Charms, which is basically this ultimate integration with NUI technology. So you have everything at your fingertips. So you can do things such as sharing. You can share your content from your Metro application with maybe something like Twitter or email. You can search applications. If you wanted to search for maybe a recipe, you could do that very easily as well. The rest of the buttons here are for things that you're going to be commonly going to, such as the start button and your devices and probably even your settings. So, but that is something that Windows 8 offers you that Silverlight didn't. So contracts, so Metro style applications use contracts and extensions to declare the interactions that they support with other apps in Windows. So a search contract opens up your application to integrate with Windows Search, as we just talked about. Share contract allows you to share your content with other applications, and then many others exist, and they can be found at this bit.ly link here. And finally, monetizing. So who doesn't want to make money? So in Silverlight applications, there really wasn't a way to distribute those applications except for through selling them yourself. Now with Windows 8, you have the ability to sell your applications in the Windows Store. And the couple of bullet points that I've added here, I think it's important to key in on that all of the applications that you submit are designed to be discovered. So there's different categories, of course, from games to business applications to social media applications. You already have the reach, you have your audience, you have 231 markets right now. There is an enterprise story that is available. So if you're only wanting to deploy for enterprise, you do have options there. And there is a very flexible business model. So you can do free applications, paid applications, or trial applications. This is exactly the same that you used in your Windows Phone 7 applications. And there's also a Microsoft Ad SDK out right now. And that Ad SDK, it is very, very similar to the SDK for Windows Phone 7. So I'm usually asked these questions, so I decided I would go ahead and announce them here. So the registration fee from the latest that I have seen is $49 US dollars, and then it's 99 US dollars for companies, and Microsoft will share up to 80% of the revenue generated from the app sale. Now, of course, as I said at the beginning, any of this information is subject to change, but according to when I prepared this slide deck, this was the most accurate information. So just as a recap of what we've talked about today, so we've started with the fundamentals. We've talked a little bit about the differences between Silverlight apps and Metro applications. We looked at the application lifecycle. Then we dove into XML and code namespaces. And then, of course, making WebRequest, Async. We learned a little bit about HTTP client in one of our demos. From storage, from files, physical files, to isolated storage. And then in navigation, we learned there is really no more URI. So we kind of got used to that in Windows Phone and in Silverlight. Now we're doing things a little bit differently. And in controls, there's a lot of new controls that are already baked in, and all of these controls are touch enabled. They're ready to go, touch input in mind. They were built with touch input in mind. Animations, they're baked directly into the WinRT, so you don't have to try to create these animations by yourself by going through Blend or something like that. And then I've also included freebies, which was what I called charms, such as searching and sharing. Silverlight applications, of course, they only really talk to themselves, and with Windows 8 Metro applications, they're more alive, and using these contracts, you can search and share information along with other things a lot more easily. And then monetizing, and that is basically by using the Microsoft Store with Windows 8 Metro applications. So the bits, the main starting point is dev.windows.com. So if you go there, you can grab the Metro style app reference and APIs. There's all kinds of sample applications. You can request a token to get into the Windows Store even though it's not open yet, and you can also check out the forums. Right now we are at the release preview stage of Windows 8 operating system. And as far as Visual Studio, it was VS11. That was the code name. The real name is going to be Visual Studio 2012. We are at a release candidate stage, which, as you see here, we went through a couple of revisions. We went from developer previews to betas to release candidates to next will be ready for manufacturers. And also, this is the .NET Framework 4.5 will be included with the Windows 8 operating system. If you're interested in seeing or learning a little bit more about my article in Visual Studio Magazine, where I ported a Silverlight 2 app to Metro, then you can check it out at that bit.ly link located there. So before we go into Q&A, I wanted to give you a little bit more information. Again, my email is michael@michaelcrump.net. Feel free to email me at any point, anytime. I still get emails from past webinars that I did for SilverlightShow. Also, I'm on the web at michaelcrump.net. And then again, you can check me out on Twitter at mbcrump. And then I have a lot of people asking me, hey, is Telerik creating Windows 8 controls? Yes, they are, and I've provided a link down there at the bottom, and you can go to that link and you can check out those products. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open the floor for some questions and answers. If you would give me just a second though to let me adjust the audio, then that would be very much appreciated.